Hey folks, welcome to Deep Dive Dispatch, the podcast where we don't just scratch the surface. We dig deep into the political landscapes that shape our world today. I'm excited to introduce your guides on this journey through history and headlines, John Matthews and his insightful co-host, Sarah Collins. Together, they'll peel back the layers of complex political issues, offering a slightly conservative viewpoint while staying rooted in facts and historical context. So, buckle up for a thought-provoking ride as we dive into the stories behind the stories. This is Deep Dive Dispatch. Let's get started.
All right, hey everyone. Let's jump into something pretty wild, shall we? Imagine a world where, top-tier education, the good stuff is totally free, online, and you even get a degree one the government actually recognizes. Can you imagine?
Sounds almost too good to be true, right?
I know, right? Well, this is what Donald Trump's putting forward with this Agenda 47 plan and this whole American Academy thing. We've got articles galore here, Newsweek, AP, think tanks. We even went to Trump's website. And, we're going to break it down, all of it, for you.
Yeah, and you know what's really interesting is the timing of all this. He announces this right when those debates about antisemitism on campuses are going on, and the whole Israel-Hamas war thing, just adds another, a whole other layer to it all, don't you think?
Yeah, it's like he just dropped this right in the middle of, it's a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
And he's totally saying this academy is the answer, right? Because traditional universities, they're too woke. They're failing our students, not giving them a balanced education, or so he says.
It really makes you think about this trend we're seeing, these worries about bias, about wokeness. It's all becoming so political. And the word woke itself, it's like a battleground. Everyone's using it to mean different things. We actually have this one source here. It talks about the word's origin, how it came from Black communities as this call for awareness of injustice.
That's wild how a word can change like that.
Yeah.
But so on Trump's website, he's saying this academy, it'll be, and I quote, strictly non-political and no wokeness or jihadism allowed. And get this, he claims it won't even touch the federal debt.
Oh, yeah. He's making some big promises there.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, how can any school, any education really be non-political, especially these days? And who gets to decide what that even means?
That's a good point. Okay, so money. Let's talk money. Trump's saying he'll fund this whole thing by taxing those huge endowments, the ones those wealthy private universities are sitting on.
Well, there is already a tax on those big endowments, remember. It was put in place during Trump's first term back in 2017.
Right, but one article we have here, it says that tax only brought in $244 million last year, and from only 58 schools. So billions and billions, like Trump says. Seems a little optimistic, unless he's going to jack that tax way up.
Yeah, and if he does that, those universities are going to fight back. They say those endowments are what fund research, scholarships, financial aid, all those important things.
So basically taking from one pot to fill another.
Yeah, maybe. And it really makes you wonder if this would actually solve things or just create more problems.
Okay, so let's say this actually happens, this academy. What's it going to look like for students?
Well, according to Trump, the academy will be giving out something he calls the full and complete equivalent of a bachelor's degree.
Okay, but will employers even care about that? Will other schools, the traditional ones, will they accept credits from this academy? I mean, there are so many questions here.
And it's hard to forget Trump's history with education, right? Remember Trump University?
Oh yeah, that didn't go so well, did it?
Not really. It ended up with lawsuits, settlements, people saying he misled them, didn't deliver on his promises. So this academy, it could face that same kind of scrutiny, especially from people who don't like Trump.
Yeah, there's a lot of baggage here, a lot we don't know.
For sure. It's hard to separate, the potential good from the politics of it all.
And that's what makes this whole thing even more interesting to look at, don't you think?
Absolutely. Politics, education, disruption, it's all tangled up together here. It's easy to get lost in all the politics swirling around this American Academy idea. But maybe we should shift gears a little and think about what the actual education might look like. I mean, the curriculum, that's the heart of it all, right?
Oh, totally. And from what Trump's saying and this Agenda 47, we can kind of start to piece together, what this academy might focus on. One thing that pops out is this emphasis on practical skills. In his announcement, he specifically mentioned training in a skilled trade.
Yeah, and that fits right in with everything else he's been saying, right? About jobs, the economy, making America competitive. He's said a lot about how traditional universities, they're just not preparing students for the jobs of the future.
So maybe we'd see courses in, I don't know, coding, data analysis, that kind of thing, cybersecurity, maybe even some advanced manufacturing. Those are hot fields right now.
Exactly. And the academy could maybe fill that gap, focus on what's in demand. It's interesting, too, because Trump has been, well, pretty critical of liberal arts education, calls it impractical, not relevant to the economy we have today.
So I'm guessing not a lot of philosophy or gender studies at the American Academy then.
Probably not, no. The focus seems to be on what Trump calls real-world stuff, the knowledge and skills that lead to jobs, to economic success.
Which, that kind of creates this conflict with what a lot of traditional universities believe, because they see the liberal arts as the base, the foundation of a well-rounded education. They say those subjects, they teach you to think critically, to communicate, things that are useful in any field, really.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if this academy takes off, how that plays out, Will employers actually prefer this vocational approach? Or will we see some kind of, some kind of hybrid model that combines the two?
So many questions. But there's another piece of this whole curriculum puzzle, and we got to talk about it. Ideology. Remember the Trump statement? The no wokeness or jihadism allowed part.
Oh, right. How does that even work in practice? Who's deciding what's too woke or what crosses the line into jihadism?
Especially now, with everything going on, everyone accusing everyone else of bias, of indoctrination. Feels like this could easily lead to censorship, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's where, it gets kind of worrying because Trump hasn't really given any specifics. Without clear guidelines, it's not hard to imagine this being used to silence people, to push a certain agenda.
We've seen this with the debates about critical race theory, haven't we? About history curriculum. You try to talk about systemic issues and suddenly you're labeled anti-American or divisive.
Exactly. And that's the danger here, right? This academy could become this platform for a very narrow view of history, of society. And that wouldn't be good for students. Not at all.
Yeah, education should be about being exposed to different ideas, about challenging what you think you know, about learning to think for yourself, not just, repeating what a political party tells you.
Absolutely. We need to talk about the curriculum, have open and honest discussions, make sure it's about intellectual freedom, about real academics, not just, conforming to some ideology.
Okay, so curriculum, ideology, we've covered those. But let's not forget the big question mark hanging over all of this: funding. Trump's whole plan depends on taxing university endowments, and that's a pretty controversial idea.
It is, definitely. There are strong arguments on both sides, and we need to, really understand what we're talking about here.
So let's start with the arguments for taxing endowments. What's the thinking there?
Well, people who support this, they often point out that, a lot of universities, they have these huge endowments, sometimes worth billions, and they argue that these schools, they're just not doing enough to make college affordable for everyone.
So the idea is take some of that money and use it to help more students.
Exactly. Some people say use it for more financial aid or even to make tuition free at public universities. And in this case, with the American Academy, it's about using those funds to create this whole new free institution.
So basically taking from the wealthy schools and giving to everyone else.
Right. And the people who support this, they often say it's about fairness, about justice. They say it's wrong for these rich schools to sit on all this money while so many students are struggling with debt just trying to get an education.
Yeah, I can see that argument, especially with how expensive college has become. And let's not forget, those endowments, they're tax exempt, right?
Exactly. And that's another thing people bring up. They say it's fair to ask these schools to give back more, to do more for the public good, especially if they're not doing enough to help with affordability on their own.
It's not just about the money, but about the responsibility these schools have, right?
Absolutely. And that's really what this whole debate is about.
Okay, so we've heard the arguments for taxing endowments. What are the other side? What are the worries?
Well, people who are against this, they say it'll have some pretty bad consequences. Like, first of all, it could really hurt the financial stability of these universities because endowments, they're not just, piles of cash sitting around. They're invested, and that generates income that the schools use for all sorts of things.
So if you tax them, that means less money for things like, paying professors, doing research, scholarships, financial aid, all that.
Exactly. And people who oppose this, they say that will hurt the quality of education, hurt research at these schools. And they also point out that a lot of schools, they already use a big chunk of their endowment income for financial aid.
So they are helping with affordability, even if some people say it's not enough.
Right. And they also worry that taxing endowments will make people less likely to donate in the future. Like, if you know your donation is going to be taxed, you might not give as much, right?
Yeah, that could have a ripple effect, hurt overall giving to higher education.
Exactly. So it's complicated, right? There are good points on both sides. In the end, it comes down to values, to what we think is important. What do we want universities to be doing? How do we balance the needs of students with keeping these schools financially healthy?
Those are the big questions we need to be thinking about, aren't they?
Yeah.
As we talk about this American academy
Yeah.
and what it might mean for higher education as a whole.
Absolutely. It's a future that, well, that affects all of us.
For sure. We need to have these conversations, think carefully, be open to different ideas, because this is important. This is really important. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit here, there's something else about this academy idea that we haven't really talked about yet. Technology. It's a big part of this.
Oh, yeah. Whether we're talking about Trump's plan or just, what's happening in education overall, technology, it's going to be a huge factor.
Yeah, this whole idea of a free online national university, it depends on technology being able to actually deliver a good education to anyone, anywhere.
And that's a big assumption, isn't it? Because online learning, it's come a long way, but there's still, there are still challenges.
Like what? What are some things technology still has trouble with when it comes to education?
One of the biggest is it's hard to replicate that feeling of a real classroom, The discussions, the debates, the questions that just pop up, those are harder to do online.
That's true. I've taken some online courses myself, and sometimes it can feel, I don't know, kind of lonely. Like you're just taking in information, not really participating.
Yeah, exactly. And that can affect, how motivated you are, how engaged you are, and that's so important for learning. Another challenge is just access. Not everyone has good internet or the latest devices or even the right software,
Yeah, the digital divide, that's a real problem if we're talking about using technology to make education more accessible.
Absolutely. It's something policymakers have to address if they want online learning to be fair, to be an option for everyone.
So with all those challenges, I mean, how can technology actually be used well in education? It feels like we're at this turning point,
Yeah, for sure. One thing technology is really good at is like personalized learning, Imagine a platform that adjusts to each student, to their pace, how they learn best, their strengths, weaknesses, all of that.
Wow, so no more one size fits all. That would be amazing.
Exactly. And technology can also give students access to so much stuff, resources, information they might not have in their own communities. Think about it, virtual field trips, online libraries, simulations, even collaborating with experts from all over the world.
That's pretty incredible when you think about it.
It is. An assessment too, how we measure what students have learned. We can move away from just, the traditional tests and use technology to make it more authentic, more tailored to each student.
So less memorizing facts and more about actually using what you've learned, showing your skills. Makes sense.
Right. And technology can give teachers feedback, in real time as it's happening, so they can adjust how they're teaching, help students who are struggling before it's too late.
That sounds so helpful for both teachers and students.
It is, but it also brings up this question that people have been debating for a while now. Can it ever really replace a teacher?
That's a big one. I mean, technology can do so much, but there's just something about having a teacher, a real person, that feels important.
I agree. Teachers, they're mentors, they guide you, they inspire you. Sometimes they're just someone who listens, Technology can't really do that, not yet anyway.
So what's the answer then? What do we do?
I think the best way forward is to combine the best of both worlds, Use technology for things like personalizing learning, expanding access, giving feedback. But also recognize that teachers, they're essential. They build relationships, they lead discussions, they provide support, and that human connection, it matters.
So it's about finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
Where technology and human interaction, they work together to create a really powerful learning experience.
Exactly. And that balance, it might look different for every student, every teacher, every classroom, every situation.
Wow, this has been, I don't know, it's been a really interesting deep dive. And honestly, I feel like we've just just scratch the surface of this whole American Academy thing. And really, the future of education as a whole.
There's just so much to think about, the politics, the curriculum, the technology. It's all connected. It's a conversation that needs to keep happening, and we need to be thoughtful, be open to different ideas.
And as we have these conversations, we can't forget that the future of education, it's something we're all creating together.
Yeah, through the choices we make, what we do, how willing we are to try new things, to challenge how things have always been done.
So to everyone listening, stay curious, stay engaged, keep thinking about these things, because there's a lot to consider, a lot to talk about as we navigate this ever-changing world of education. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, happy learning, everyone.
Hey folks, thanks for tuning in to Deep Dive Dispatch. We hope you found today's episode enlightening and packed full of insight. Remember, your support keeps us diving deep into the stories that matter. So if you enjoyed the show, make sure to download and share it with others who crave a deeper understanding of politics and history. And don't forget, we want to hear from you. If there's a topic out there that you think deserves a deep dive, reach out and let us know. Your input helps us bring you the most compelling content week after week. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll catch you next time on Deep Dive Dispatch. Keep exploring, folks.